as prosecutors made their case for the death penalty. They focused on 4 aggravating factors, including that Clyde Gibson was on probation when he killed Kirk. Police discovered Kirk after Gibson admitted to killing her. At the time, he was in custody for another murder, that of 75-year-old Christine Whitus.
Just glad it's over and he can't hurt nobody else.
Maybe now I can clean out her room a little bit and put some things in order and we can go forward a little bit. So, it doesn't bring her back, but at least she's got justice.
Throughout history, there have been people who have committed some of the most heinous crimes fathomable. For those crimes, they have been convicted and sentenced to death. Welcome to Death Row Executions, where we take a look into the lives of society's worst offenders. And now, your host, Air.
William Clyde Gibson III was born on October 10, 1957 in Raleigh, North Carolina. His parents, William Jr. and mother Geraldine, had 4 children altogether, and William was the youngest. A couple of years after William was born, the family moved from North Carolina to Indiana, and that is where he and his family settled for good. Growing up, William received a lot of love and respect from his parents. He claimed that although his father would excessively drink and get rowdy when he was drunk, he was still very spoiled and treated well when he was young.
I don't fit any of their profiles. I've never been through the animals, never set fires, no kind of self-mutilation or none of that stuff.
Despite being in a loving home, William continued to have issues throughout his school career. He had social issues, displayed odd behavior, and was often bullied. It wasn't until he started puberty and went to middle school that he grew bigger and was finally able to defend himself. Unfortunately, William took it a step further than just defending himself, and he decided to become the bully. He was constantly getting into fights, not following the rules in class, and was running wild. Some of his old classmates witnessed William shooting someone in the eye with a pellet gun, but he got away with this crime. In 1970, William took after his father and started drinking himself. The following year, his petty crimes caught up with him, and he was arrested for stealing a motorbike. He was sent to a juvenile correctional facility, and when he got out, he decided to officially drop out of school and continue on with his life of crime. After crashing 2 separate cars due to him being intoxicated behind the wheel, William decided that a change was necessary, so he joined the Army. He was working as a mechanic stationed in West Germany and had won multiple awards and badges for his efforts. No matter how many positive things William had going for himself, substance abuse and crime kept screaming his name. He dabbled in heroin, cocaine, and LSD, and eventually became addicted. In 1979, at the age of 22, William was dishonorably discharged from the Army because he was busted for stealing a car. On top of being discharged, he was sentenced to a year in prison. The following year, upon his release from prison, he met and married a woman. It was June of 1980, and William had been clean and doing well in his new marriage. The couple decided to try for a baby, but no matter how much they tried, his wife was never able to conceive. They both sought medical help and advice, and William was diagnosed with infertility. After this diagnosis, William started using drugs again, and it has been documented that he would smoke at least 20 joints a day. Life was never the same for William, and honest work and a stable relationship was not something he yearned for anymore. In late January of 1991, William got into a car accident. Things were okay until a police officer showed up to inspect the damages. William got spooked, drove off, and a high-speed chase began. Things didn't end well for William because he ended up crashing his car with an innocent driver. Not only did William have to get stitches in his head due to his injuries, but the innocent driver had 8 broken ribs and had to be hospitalized. William spent little to no time locked up, and just 8 months after his high-speed chase gone bad, he committed yet another crime. This time, he was busted and charged with robbery and sexual assault. He had found a woman he decided to prey on and assaulted her inside of a phone booth. While being held in jail, William's attorneys claimed that he was mentally ill, and they requested an evaluation to check whether or not he was sane. The evaluation was granted, and after being examined by psychologist J. Robert Noonan, he concluded that William not only had an IQ of 79, which is considered borderline to being intellectually disabled, but he also refused to take responsibility for his actions. William told Robert Noonan that the crime was not his fault because he was drinking. He also expressed that he was not suffering from any mental illnesses and his judgment was not impaired. His responses were all over the place, but because he claimed to be aware of his actions, psychologist J. Robert Noonan found William to be competent to stand trial. William accepted a plea deal and was sentenced to 7 years in prison at the Luther Luckett Correctional Complex. During this time, although checked out of his marriage, he was still legally married. When his wife found out about his conviction, she decided to divorce him. It took more than drugs and being charged with a horrible crime to ditch him for good. While locked up, William was in a rehabilitation program for his sexual assault offense, but because he continued to deny responsibility for his crimes, he was kicked out of the program. Despite never having any remorse, prison officials said he was a good inmate who rarely caused trouble. He was even able to earn an associate's degree in art. William could have been released early for good behavior, but he was given multiple psychiatric assessments, and each assessment concluded that he had poor judgment, experienced feeling lonely, and was losing control. Despite these assessment results and never admitting responsibility, he was deemed unlikely to reoffend. Although deemed unlikely to reoffend, he did complete his full sentence and he was released from prison on April 5, 1999. Upon his release from prison, William was added to the Indiana Offender Registry, and this didn't stop him from starting a new relationship with a woman named Kelly Bailey. The two ended up moving in with each other in Borden, Indiana, but the following year, Kelly decided to leave William because he began using drugs again and living with him was unbearable.
We just happened to be in the same department on the same shift, second shift. He was talking to me a lot. And finally, like a stupid person, I gave in to him. I said, well, give it a shot and see what happens. Lo and behold, if I knew what I was going to get into right then and there, I don't think I would have done it. He told me there was 4 things he wanted to do. 1 was bank robbery. 2 was auto theft. 3 was, 4th was murder.
Even after they split, though, William caused issues for Kelly. Kelly had to file a police report because William had blocked her car in with his car while she was delivering newspapers. She was unable to escape because he assaulted her, stole her keys, and fled the scene on foot. Some might say that there was a lot of evidence, including marks on her body that were left behind after having been assaulted, but police dropped the case because they said there was a lack of evidence. There was no investigation to find out who took her car keys, and William was able to avoid jail time. In 2001, William was finally arrested again after getting busted for stealing a Harley-Davidson motorcycle. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison for this crime. Even though he had no formal diagnosis yet, the prison allowed him to spend 1.5 years of his sentence at the Madison State Hospital. He was allowed to detox from his drug addiction. William was never interested in receiving any help, but 2 separate psychiatrists did diagnose him with bipolar disorder, and he was prescribed Seroquel. Doctors deemed him suitable enough to go back to prison, so he was sent to the Floyd County Jail to complete the last 1.5 years of his sentence, but he was released early in March of 2002. Shortly after this prison stint, William was back to his old ways. Just 7 months after his release from jail, in October of 2002, William met a 44-year-old woman named Karen Sue Hodella while drinking out at a bar. Karen was there solely to visit her boyfriend, but after some time had passed and drinks were consumed, William and Karen ended up going back to an apartment complex together. William claimed that Karen took some pills out and was unwilling to share them, so they started arguing. Court documents do claim that the pills were Karen's prescription pills, but William claimed that he was the one who stole the pills, so he should have had first dibs on them. William got so angry with Karen that he killed her and dumped her body in Clarksville. In remembrance of his first kill, he went to a tattoo parlor and got the date of the murder and the murder weapon tattooed on his lower right arm. William was temporarily able to get away with this murder, and Karen's decomposed body wasn't found until a few months later in January of 2003. Being that Karen had previously been arrested, her fingerprints were in the system, so police were able to identify her unrecognizable body. A few weeks after Karen was killed, not found, William was arrested but for something unrelated to Karen's murder. He was drunk driving again and got locked up. While in jail, he was unable to drink and went 4 days without any illegal substances. Prison psychiatrist Dr. Daniel Howerton examined William during his withdrawal and documented that William suffered from headaches, stomach aches, insomnia, hypochondria, and was diagnosed with mild anxiety and antisocial behavior. He was still deemed sane, though, and was sent back to general population. In May of 2003, William ended up suing the prison because they refused to give him medication for his schizophrenia and for bad living conditions. A federal judge threw out the claim because he said that William's accusations were baseless. William was finally released from prison, and he was able to avoid getting caught for any crimes for a while. He continued using drugs and frequenting bars, though. On February 21, 2006, William stole $300 from his female friend. This female friend was married, though, so she told her husband that William stole from her, and the husband tracked Will down. Once he found William, he contacted the local police to let them know what happened and where William was. William was arrested for theft and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. He was released on Independence Day, July 4, 2009. Upon this release, William finally got an honest-paying job at CNC Hardwood Flooring. He was a good worker and actually made friends who weren't into crimes and drugs. His life was changing around so much that he even decided to start attending church. Some say he was changing because his mother Geraldine was getting sick. Although his behavior was temporarily changing for the better, William started frequenting bars again. Patrons considered him to be a weird guy, and they would often see him hit on women and successfully have them willing to come back to his place to enjoy the evening. Eventually, the positive attitude and actions started to decline. William stopped attending church after a couple of years in August of 2011, when Geraldine was admitted into a nursing home. A year after being admitted, Geraldine passed away at the Floyd Memorial Hospital on January 18, 2012. Quick question for my viewers. Do you think William attempted to live a good life for the sake of his dying mother and fell off the bandwagon only because she passed away? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. A couple of months after Geraldine passed away, on March 24, 2012, William met 35-year-old Stephanie Marie Kirk at another bar. Stephanie was wooed by William's words and his nice motorcycle. They spent the day doing drugs together, and they even had a few sexual encounters that day. Just like his previous victim, Karen, she and William started sharing pills together, but they began to argue over how much they should get. This angered William, and he sexually and physically assaulted her, killed her, and buried her in his backyard. Poor Stephanie suffered a broken back in the process of the assaults. The next month, on April 18, 2012, a 75-year-old friend of the late Geraldine stopped by to pay William a visit. Her name was Christine Wittes. It is just a claim, but in William's own words, Christine was a widow and the two had consensual sexual encounters. Christine had even given money to William on a few occasions as support.
She's 75 years old, right?
Right. After her husband died, we actually had together. It was a mutual thing. I never told nobody, and she never told nobody.
Unfortunately, Christine would also lose her life at the hands of William. He killed her just like his previous victims, but he treated her body even worse. Christine was missing parts of her body. William put Christina inside of garbage bags and left her on the garage floor. The very next day, William went out drinking and driving around in Christine's car. When he was away from home, one of his sisters stopped by his house, which was really the house his mother lived in. His sister was there with the intentions of settling the division of the family estate. When she walked through the garage, she found Christine's body and she immediately called 911. Police went looking for William, but he had been arrested already for driving while intoxicated. 5 days after William was arrested, he was charged with the murder of Christine. William had no issues confessing to other murders, and on April 27th, they dug up Stephanie's body from the backyard. William had confessed to killing over 33 women, but he claimed authorities did not believe him.
The first murder I ever committed was for money, and it was overseas. Well, I know I killed 33.
They did charge him for 3 murders: the murder of Karen, Stephanie, and Christine. Prosecutors let it be known that they were going to be seeking the death penalty for 3 separate trials. When William's murder trial commenced, prosecutors played an interview for the court where William had been talking to investigators. In this recording, William let them know that evil had overcome him and made him commit murder. With William having no issues admitting to his crimes, it was easy for a jury to find him guilty. They deliberated for less than 20 minutes when they found him guilty on October 25, 2013, of killing Christine Wittes. The following month, he was sentenced to death and told the judge it was no big deal because he deserved what he was getting. William was still set to have 2 more trials for the remaining 2 women who were killed. William changed his plea to guilty and waived his right to a speedy trial. As part of the plea deal, prosecutors agreed not to present evidence at the trial for the murder of Karen that would be used as an aggravating factor in follow-up trials. Also, while in prison awaiting trial, William got a big tattoo on the back of his head that said Death Row ×3. Justice Susan Orth said the tattoo was very noticeable and could sway a jury and possibly prevent a fair trial. The judge ordered that prison officials not be allowed to shave William's head so his hair could grow out and cover the tattoo. For the last murder trial, William pled guilty and waived his rights to a speedy trial again. Despite being sentenced to death already, prosecutors were still aiming for another death sentence. The court found William guilty of killing Stephanie, and on August 15, 2014, he was sentenced to death again, with Justice Orth saying that death was the only appropriate sentence. Since being on death row, and despite admitting to murder and saying he deserved his sentences, he has appealed his sentence on numerous occasions. His attorneys claim that his confession was a mitigating circumstance. The Indiana Supreme Court has rejected all appeals thus far, reaffirming his convictions. William has also been a part of multiple interviews, he was a podcast guest, and he was even featured in the 2018 special Inside Death Row by Trevor McDonald. Thank you all for watching another episode of Death Row Executions. Let me know what you guys think of this story in the comments below.